I thought I was just going to have a normal flight to visit my family. I didn't think I'd end up in a full-blown war of words with a woman who screamed like a banshee over a seat. The whole thing was one of those situations where you think, this can't actually be happening right now, but somehow it is. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening. Your support means everything. It all started when I boarded my flight from Chicago to Miami. I'd been up all night working on a last-minute project for work, so I was exhausted. I barely even remember checking in at the gate. I was just trying to stay awake long enough to get on the plane and get settled. As I walked down the jet bridge, I noticed the woman in front of me. She was in her mid-40s, blonde, wearing oversized sunglasses even though we were indoors. She had that energy, you know, the type that makes you instinctively brace yourself for something dramatic. I didn't think much of it until I got to my seat, 148, and saw her standing right there next to it. "Excuse me, that's my seat," I said, gently pointing to the number above me. She glanced at me, then back at the overhead compartment where her giant Louis Vuitton bag was somehow too large for the space. But she didn't seem to care. "I'm sitting there," she said, looking me dead in the eye, like it was a power move or something. I stared at her, confused. "No, that's definitely my seat. I just boarded and checked my ticket. It says 148. She crossed her arms. "Well, I'm sitting here now, and I'm not moving." At this point, I was kind of just baffled. I mean, I get it, sometimes people make mistakes, right? Maybe she was confused. But as I stood there, trying to make sense of the situation, it became clear that this wasn't a mix-up. This was a woman who was choosing to be difficult. "Look, I'm sure you're tired, just like I am, but this is my seat," I said, trying to stay calm. I could feel the adrenaline starting to rise, but I didn't want to escalate things right away. She let out a huff, then turned her back to me and sat down in the window seat. "Too bad. I don't care what your ticket says." I blinked. Okay, this wasn't good. I had no interest in arguing with some entitled stranger over a seat, but at the same time, I wasn't about to let her take what was mine. I didn't want to be that person, but I made the call to call the flight attendant over. "Excuse me," I said to the nearest stewardess. "There's a woman sitting in my seat, and she's refusing to move." The flight attendant, a tall woman with a calm demeanor, walked over. I could feel the heat in my face. I was embarrassed, but this woman had taken over my seat without a second thought. "Ma'am, can you please check your ticket?" the attendant asked, keeping things professional. The Karen, because let's face it, we all know what kind of person this was, looked up at the flight attendant with an exaggerated sigh. "I don't have time for this. I've already been in airports all day, and now I'm being bothered by some random person who's complaining about a seat." She snapped her fingers, and I could hear it how ridiculous she sounded. I was just waiting for her to escalate it into a full-on scene. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is 148, the flight attendant said, a little firmer now. "This passenger has the seat assigned to them." Double quotes. Karen, in all her glory, just folded her arms again. "Well, this seat is fine for me. You need to find somewhere else for this person. Seriously, I don't know what your problem is, lady," I said, now trying to hold back my frustration. "But I've got a long day ahead of me, and I want to sit down." The tension was thick. The woman, now glaring at both me and the flight attendant, clearly wanted to make this into something bigger than it needed to be. I had a sinking feeling that the rest of the flight was about to be a nightmare. But then, plot twist, just as I was stewing in the disbelief of what was happening, the woman next to her, a much older woman, leaned forward from her all seat. "Ma'am, I think you should move," she said softly. The woman looked at her, probably annoyed that someone had dared speak up. "Excuse me," she sneered. "Just move," the older woman repeated, her voice calm but forceful. "You're making a scene. There are plenty of other seats available." Now, this was getting interesting. Karen was fuming, but something had clicked in her brain, and she was starting to backpedal. Just a little. I'm not the one causing the scene, she huffed. But her tone was quieter now. Fine, I'll move, happy. I could see the flight attendant looking pleased, but I didn't want to let my guard down. This was a Karen we were dealing with. She might have stepped back for a second, but I could feel like she was plotting something else. The attendant walked her to a different seat, still clearly trying to maintain the peace. But I could feel the crowd's eyes following her. They were watching, waiting for the fallout. But then, just as I settled into my seat, breathing a sigh of relief that the drama was over, I felt something cold on my shoulder. I turned to look, and it was a drink. She'd thrown her drink at me. I stared at her in disbelief, still processing what just happened. The cold soda dripped down my shirt and onto my lap. Now you're really asking for it, I muttered, standing up quickly. I wasn't going to let her get away with that. I turned to the flight attendant, who was standing nearby, watching the situation unfold. I need a new shirt, please. She just threw her drink on me. The flight attendant immediately sprang into action, telling me to stay calm and bringing a towel to help clean myself up. Meanwhile, Karen, no longer in her seat, was talking loudly to the man across the aisle about how inconsiderate I was. Even though she was the one who had started the whole thing, I couldn't believe it. I thought this was over, that I'd seen the worst of it. But no, Karen was determined to have the final word. I kept my cool. I really did. But at this point, I was done. I had been polite, I had stayed calm, and now I was not going to let her keep making me out to be the villain in this. I stood up again, this time moving toward the flight attendant and getting their attention. Can you get me a manager, please? I asked, my voice low and controlled. This woman is harassing me. The flight attendant, a little surprised at how far I'd gone, nodded. I'll be right back. And just like that, the plane went silent for a moment. Karen, who had thought she'd won, seemed to realize that something was shifting. She muttered angrily under her breath, but I could see the doubt creeping in. When the manager arrived, the situation shifted entirely. The flight attendant explained everything, and the manager gave Karen a clear ultimatum: either you move, or you'll be escorted off the plane before we even take off. Karen, for once, realized she was beaten. She muttered something about rude people and disrespecting her, but she got up, grabbed her bag, and moved. The flight was calm after that, and honestly, I could barely believe it had actually happened. The woman next to me, the one who had spoken up earlier, gave me a nod of approval. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, she said. And you know what? I did. I didn't back down. And honestly, I walked away from that flight with a bit more confidence. Sometimes, all it takes is one Karen to remind you that you don't have to tolerate unreasonable behavior.